What's up, traders? It's Mark Sebastian, your only option, and this is your look at the week ahead. Today, we're looking at levels in the S&P 500, the Qs, the Dow Jones, the Russell 2000. We might look at RSP as well. I'm going to give you the 5 stocks I'm watching. We're going to look at the VIX and the kink there, and how we can take advantage of it using two-way trade. So with that, let's dig in. All right, everybody. So the S&P had a pretty good week on Friday. Last week closed not at all-time highs. The all-time highs were on the 10th. Happens to be my sister's birthday, but still nicely up on the week. But what was weird was Friday's kind of end-of-day selling. We were going to close at a new all-time high. The S&P was up about 65 points. They gave away over half of that in the last half hour of trading. Absolutely nuts. We saw the same thing in the Qs. The Qs absolutely got smushed at the end of the day. And where we didn't really see that as much was in the Dow. Yeah, the Dow still closed, off the highs, but it was still nicely up about 0.6% more than the S&P, more than triple Q, and the Russell 2000 closed the day up 1.2%. Yeah, still off the highs, but had itself a pretty nice day. Gapped higher, continues to look really strong. So going into next week, you got to wonder whether there's going to be some continued rotation. One of the things I've been talking about is how we've been seeing the equal weight, which is the relationship between the S&P 500 and the S&P equal weight. So the S&P 500 is cap weighted. That means the more valuable your company is, the bigger the piece of the S&P. Equal weight is not exactly this, but pretty close. If I put $100 in every stock, how do I do? Going into the 9th, starting April 11th, on July 9th, putting $100 in every stock, you were down 0.5%. Despite the fact at the time, the S&P was up 7.3%. Why? Well, look at the Qs, all those big 8 stocks. Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Meta, Nvidia, Google, Tesla, and Broadcom. Those 8 names had really just driven the stock market higher. Well, on Wednesday, we kind of saw rising tide lifts all boats. RSP rallied, S&P rallied, Qs rallied. Thursday, we saw kind of that convergence begin to happen. S&P was down almost 1%, NASDAQ down over 2%, and the equal weight up over 1.3%. And then Friday, a little bit rising tide, a little bit more convergence. RSP outperformed the S&P and the Qs on Friday. So the RSP is now starting to close this gap. It's down to less than 6. If this trend continues, that could get down to about 3 or 4 points. So we could see the S&P lose 1, 2, 3%, and RSP gain. Alternative, S&P drops, RSP sits. Worst case scenario, they all drop and S&P drops faster. That is completely on the cards, especially if we have another day where those big 8 all drop like they did on Thursday. Thursday was the first time those big 8 had all dropped at once in a very, very long time. Now, let's look at the 5 stocks I'm watching this week. And I want to start with Taiwan Semiconductor. Taiwan Semiconductor reports earnings on the 18th. This is the first big tech stock. It's definitely one to watch. Next, Goldman Sachs. They report the morning of the 15th. It is sitting at basically at Goldman's at an all-time high. So those earnings better be stellar. We saw what happened with JP Morgan. JP Morgan had earnings on Friday, and it was at an all-time high. They did sell it off some. So Goldman, we could definitely see some selling there. Next up, NVIDIA. Bring this back to the 3-month. After just getting destroyed on Thursday, managed to hold green a little bit on Friday, but it's still riding that 21. I get the feeling it's going to pierce it. We could see 120, something along those lines. Another one I'm watching is Apple. Apple is really stretched above the 21-day. I think there's a sell-off coming there. And finally, last but not least, I'm watching Rail. We've been seeing a lot of bullish paper in CP. Look at it the way it is. That's Canadian Pacific. It's now over the 200-day moving average in a very long time. It hasn't been above the 200 since May 10th. Now it's dojing. I want to see, can it continue that rally, or is it going to turn around? You look at the other rails, kind of similar pattern. Norfolk Southern, UNP. But I'm kind of liking Rail. And last but not least, and I know I said 5, keep an eye on CCJ. CCJ had a really nice Wednesday, kind of a meh on Thursday, and then down on Friday. Keep an eye on nuclear. That's been interesting. So those are kind of the names I'm watching now. I want to talk VIX. And VIX looked like it wanted to break 11 and didn't. I want to show you something. They're pricing in an election premium here, and I don't think it's warranted. I think that's going to collapse. And what does that play into? I believe that this is a real opportunity for a two-way trade. What are two-way trades? It's a method Andrew, and a little bit of me, but Andrew has developed to create consistent returns in this market. And remember at the top, I was talking about, well, what if the S&P drops and the RSP drops too, and the S&P just drops faster? If that happens and we get a full-on sell-off, two-way trades absolutely cleans up, and that is what I'm looking for potentially with this kink here. There's a real opportunity there. This kink, I believe, is going to get traded out of it, but there is a trade there between October and November that I think is really interesting. We're going to be talking about that in two-way trades and maybe a little bit in Trading Desk as well. All right, folks. If you want to learn more about two-way trades, the link to it is in this. You can watch a video of Andrew and I discussing the whole thing. If you're watching me on YouTube, like, subscribe, and leave a comment or a question. I want to get to it. And the link to check out two-way trades is in the description in this video. All right, folks. I'm Mark Sebastian, your only option. You got questions? Shoot me an email, support@optionpit.com, or call us 888-872-3301. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. I'll see you soon.